What kind of father gets a text saying a cruise is just for our little family, and that he would only embarrass them, then calmly goes to the bank instead of begging to come? He quietly removes his name from their $140,000 mortgage and watches their dream house vanish from under them. This is how I did that, and why what came after hurt my son and his wife much more. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I was sitting in my one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, packing a small duffel bag with gifts I'd picked up for the grandkids. Nothing fancy. A fishing lure for Noah that I'd found at a garage sale for $3, carefully polished until the brass gleamed and looked almost new. A little stuffed dolphin for Hailey that I'd found on sale at a corner shop, soft and powder blue with button eyes that reminded me of how she looked at me when I told her stories about the ocean. I'd been setting aside $20 here and there for months, tucking bills into an envelope labeled Cruise Fund that I kept in the kitchen drawer beneath the silverware tray. I was thinking about this cruise Evan had mentioned back in January. He'd said it casually over dinner, the way people do when they're testing the waters, gauging interest without committing to anything. We're thinking about booking something for spring break. The kids would love it. You know, somewhere warm, maybe the Caribbean, one of those big ships with the water slides and the buffets. I'd nodded and smiled, already imagining Noah's face when he saw the ocean for the first time, the way his eyes would go wide when he realized how far the water stretched. Already thinking about how I could help with the cost if they needed it. Maybe I could cover the kids' tickets, I'd thought. Maybe I could chip in for excursions or help with the deposit. I'd started researching cruise lines late at night on my old laptop, looking at what a single cabin would cost for an old man traveling alone but near his family. The prices were higher than I expected, but I figured I could make it work. I always made it work. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic from the highway half a mile away. Cars rushing somewhere, always rushing. I'd lived here for 6 years now, ever since I retired from the maintenance supervisor job at the warehouse complex on the industrial side of town. The place was small, but clean. One bedroom barely big enough for a double bed and a scratched-up dresser I'd bought secondhand, a kitchen with a two-person table that wobbled unless you folded a napkin under one leg, a living room with just enough space for a couch I'd picked up at a thrift store, and a television that still had a DVD player built in because I'd never bothered to upgrade. The walls were cream-colored and mostly bare, except for a few framed photos of the grandkids that I'd printed at a local shop and put in inexpensive frames. School pictures, mostly. Noah missing his front teeth in first grade, grinning like a jack-o'-lantern. Hailey in a pink dress at some holiday concert, holding a tambourine she probably never actually played. I didn't need much, never had. My whole life had been about function over form, about making things work with what you had, about fixing what was broken and keeping the machinery running long past when other people would have given up. But I remembered when I'd had more. Before I sold my car, a 2003 Honda Accord with 140,000 miles that still ran perfectly well, never gave me a day of trouble, but that I'd let go for $4,800 to a young couple who needed reliable transportation and couldn't afford anything newer. Before I emptied most of my savings account, watching the balance drop from $47,000 to less than $7,000 in a single month, the numbers shrinking so fast it made me dizzy. Before I signed those papers at the bank that made Evan's dream house possible, papers that had felt important and official and like I was doing something real for my son's future, something that would matter long after I was gone. I zipped the duffel bag and set it by the door, then checked my phone. No messages. The screen was blank except for the time, 6:47 p.m., and a reminder about a doctor's appointment next week. I sent a quick text to Evan. Hey, just checking in about the cruise. If there's room, I'd love to join. Happy to pay my own way. Let me know what works for you guys. I waited. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately, disappeared, appeared again, then nothing. I made myself a cup of instant coffee, the cheap kind that came in a big plastic jar and tasted like hot brown water but cost less than $2 and lasted a month if I was careful, and sat at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the parking lot below. A young couple was loading groceries into their trunk, laughing about something. The man said something that made the woman double over, holding her stomach, nearly dropping a bag of oranges. They looked happy, free, like they had their whole lives ahead of them and nothing weighing them down. No debts, no regrets, no sons who looked at them like they were embarrassments. I thought about calling Evan directly, but I didn't want to seem pushy. Brianna always said I had a way of inserting myself into their plans. She'd said it at Thanksgiving when I'd offered to bring a pie, just a simple pumpkin pie from the store, nothing fancy. Henry, you don't need to insert yourself into everything. We've got it handled. Evan had laughed nervously and changed the subject, but the words had stuck with me like a splinter under the skin. Insert myself, like I was an unwanted addition, forcing my way into spaces where I didn't belong, like I was a problem to be managed rather than family to be welcomed. My phone buzzed. I picked it up quickly, my heart lifting for just a second, expecting a cheerful reply, maybe even an invitation. Maybe Evan saying, "Oh, of course, Dad. We'd love to have you. Let me talk to Brianna about cabin arrangements. Maybe we can get you something on the same deck." Instead, I read, "This cruise is just for our little family. Brianna says you'd only embarrass us. Stop inviting yourself." I read it twice, then a third time. The coffee cup was warm in my hands, almost hot enough to hurt. Outside, the couple had finished loading their car and were driving away, still laughing. I sat very still, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not anger exactly, not yet. Just a cold, clear understanding. Like when you're working on a machine and you finally see which belt is worn, which gear is stripped, which part has been failing slowly for months and is about to give out completely. That moment of clarity when everything suddenly makes sense. Embarrass us. Stop inviting yourself. Little family. I placed the phone face down on the table and stood up slowly. My knees ached. They always did after sitting too long, arthritis settling in the way it does when you've spent 40 years on concrete floors. But I ignored the discomfort and walked across the room. On top of a bookshelf that held mostly old paperback mysteries with cracked spines and a few repair manuals I'd accumulated over the years, there was a dusty accordion folder I hadn't touched in almost 3 years. I pulled it down, feeling the weight of it, the heft of all those papers. The label on the front, written in my own handwriting with a blue ballpoint pen, said, "House, Cole, Mortgage." I carried it back to the table and opened it. Inside were photocopies of documents I'd signed when Evan bought his house, the mortgage paperwork, the title, the initial loan application with all its complicated financial jargon. My name right there next to his, plain as day, Henry Cole, co-borrower. Henry Cole, guarantor. The bank had made it clear back then, without my credit score, a 780, built up over 40 years of paying every bill on time, never missing a payment, never defaulting on anything, and my pension income of $2,100 a month, Evan wouldn't have qualified for the loan. Not even close. His credit score had been in the low 600s, damaged by some medical bills from when Noah broke his arm falling off a trampoline at a birthday party and they didn't have good insurance. His income was decent but inconsistent, tied to sales commissions that fluctuated wildly from month to month depending on how many electronics he could move at the regional store where he worked. I pulled out my phone again and opened the calendar app. I scrolled forward to Monday and created a new reminder. Bank, 9 a.m. Then I closed the folder, finished my coffee, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep much. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling with its water stain that looked like a map of some country I'd never visit, replaying the text over and over in my mind. Embarrass us. The words felt like a slap across the face, sharp and unexpected, like everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, had been erased, rewritten into a story where I was the burden, the embarrassment, the person they had to manage and keep at arm's length because I might say the wrong thing or wear the wrong clothes or somehow taint their perfect family image. I thought about Noah and Hailey, about how they'd feel if I wasn't there, about whether they'd even notice my absence or if Brianna would just tell them Grandpa was busy, Grandpa had other plans, Grandpa couldn't make it this time. And I thought about the house, about how much of myself I'd poured into making it possible. The money, the credit, the co-signature that had felt like an act of love at the time. Somewhere around 3 a.m, I got up and made another cup of coffee. I sat at the table and pulled out the folder again, reading through every page by the dim light of the kitchen lamp. The loan amount, the interest rate, the monthly payment schedule, the clause on page 7 that explained what would happen if circumstances changed, if one party wanted out, if the arrangement became untenable. By the time the sun came up, streaking orange light across the parking lot and through my window, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Sunday morning, I drove out to the old warehouse where I used to work. Not because I had any business there, but because I needed to clear my head, and sometimes familiar places help with that. The building was a massive concrete structure on the edge of the industrial district, surrounded by chain-link fencing and loading docks where trucks backed up to receive shipments of electronics and appliances that would be distributed across 3 states. I'd spent 23 years there, working my way up from general maintenance to supervisor, fixing conveyor belts that jammed at the worst possible times and hydraulic lifts that leaked fluid, and keeping the whole operation running when everyone else wanted to go home. The cafeteria was still open on weekends for the skeleton crew, and I knew a few of the old-timers would be around, the guys who couldn't quite let go even after retirement. When I walked in, Eddie Ramirez looked up from his breakfast sandwich and grinned. He was a big man, arms thick from years of manual labor, with gray hair cropped close to his skull and a mustache he'd had since I met him in 1998. "Henry Cole, thought you forgot about us." "Never," I said, grabbing a tray from the stack by the door. "Just been busy." "Busy doing what?" "You're retired. You're supposed to be fishing or playing golf or whatever the heck retired people do, sitting on a beach somewhere, living the dream." I shrugged and ordered scrambled eggs and toast from the woman behind the counter. Her name was Patricia, and she'd worked there longer than I had. She remembered how I liked my coffee. Black, no sugar, hot enough to burn, and poured it without asking. Eddie waved me over to his table, where two other guys I recognized were sitting. Tom Burkhart, who'd worked in shipping and receiving for 30 years, and Gene Kowalski, who'd been in the machine shop, always covered in grease and metal shavings. They asked about my health, my apartment, whether I was getting out enough, whether I'd found any hobbies to fill the time. Nobody asked if I was lonely, nobody treated me like I was in the way, nobody suggested I was embarrassing or that I didn't fit in. It was strange, sitting there, realizing that these men, guys I'd worked with for 20 years but never socialized with outside of lunch breaks and the occasional retirement party, showed me more warmth in 10 minutes than my own son had in the past 6 months. Eddie asked if I'd heard about the new contract negotiations. The union was pushing for better healthcare coverage and the company was dragging its feet, claiming they couldn't afford it while simultaneously reporting record profits. I hadn't been keeping up with the details, but Eddie filled me in on everything. He remembered that I'd been part of the negotiating committee back in 2004, when we'd fought for better safety equipment after 2 workers got injured in the same week and won. He asked what I thought they should push for, what leverage they had, what tactics would work best with the current management team. I offered some advice based on the old union fights we'd been through together. I told him about the time we'd documented every safety violation for 3 months straight, every frayed wire, every broken guardrail, every missing fire extinguisher, and presented it all at once in a massive binder that was impossible to ignore, forcing management's hand because the alternative was regulatory involvement and fines. He listened carefully, took notes on a napkin with a stubby pencil he pulled from his pocket, thanked me like I'd given him something valuable, like my experience still mattered. When I left an hour later, I felt more solid, more real, like I still had something to contribute to the world, like I wasn't just taking up space, breathing air that could be better used by someone younger and more relevant. I thought about the mortgage on the drive home, thought about the day I'd signed those papers. Evan had been so excited. It was late August, 3 years ago, hot and humid, the kind of day where the air felt thick enough to swim through. He'd brought Brianna and the kids to my apartment, and we'd all sat on my couch, cramped but happy, while he showed me pictures of the house on his phone, swiping through image after image. 4 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a backyard with a wooden playset already installed, and a patch of grass big enough for the kids to run around, hardwood floors that gleamed in the photos, granite countertops in the kitchen, stainless steel appliances, a 2-car garage. The seller was motivated because they were relocating for work, moving to another state for some corporate job. The price was fair, $140,000 in a decent school district where the test scores were good and the crime rate was low. But the bank wanted a cosigner. Actually, they wanted more than that. They wanted someone with better credit and provable income to essentially share responsibility for the loan to guarantee that if Evan couldn't pay, someone else would step in. "Just until I get my next promotion, Dad," Evan had said, his eyes bright with hope and possibility. "A year, maybe 2. Then I'll refinance and get you off the hook. I promise. You won't be tied to this forever. I just need this one thing, this one favor, and then I'll take care of everything myself." Brianna had smiled at me. A real smile back then, warm and genuine, the kind that reached her eyes. "We really appreciate this, Henry. It means the world. We want to give the kids stability, you know? A real home where they can grow up. Roots, a place that's ours. We can't do that without you." I'd felt needed, important, like I was helping build something that would last, something that would matter, like I was investing in the future. I'd sold my car the next week, took the bus to the bank, sitting next to people half my age who were scrolling through their phones, and signed everything they put in front of me. Pages and pages of documents with tiny print that I tried to read carefully but mostly just trusted. Moved $40,000 from my savings to cover the down payment, because Evan's savings account had been drained by medical bills when Noah broke his arm. The bone had come through the skin and required surgery and physical therapy. Brianna had been between jobs at the time, waiting to start a new position. Their insurance had been terrible, one of those high-deductible plans that barely covered anything. They'd been drowning in bills, barely keeping their heads above water, stressed and fighting and afraid they'd never get ahead. I'd told myself it was an investment, that I was helping my son build a life, that this was what fathers did. They sacrificed for their children, they made things possible, they opened doors that would otherwise stay closed. That afternoon, I met Noah and Hailey at the park near their house. It was a small neighborhood park with swings and a slide and a merry-go-round that squeaked when it turned, the kind of place where mothers pushed strollers and joggers did laps and teenagers sat on benches looking at their phones. Brianna had texted me, a short clip message that just said, "Can you watch the kids 2-4, have errands?" saying she'd drop them off for a couple of hours while she ran errands. No, please. No thank you in advance. Just an assumption that I'd be available, that I had nothing better to do. I bought the kids ice cream from a truck parked near the playground, an old white van with faded pictures of popsicles and cartoon characters on the side. Noah wanted chocolate with rainbow sprinkles piled so high they fell off with every lick. Hailey wanted strawberry in a cone, even though I knew she'd make a mess, knew the pink ice cream would end up on her shirt and her hands and probably her hair. I didn't care. I watched them chase each other around the swings, their laughter cutting through the warm afternoon air like music. They were good kids, smart, funny, full of energy and questions and observations about everything they saw. Hailey climbed into my lap on the bench, her face sticky with melted ice cream, her little fingers leaving pink smudges on my shirt. "Grandpa, are you coming on the boat with us?" "I don't think so, sweetheart." "Why not?" I didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her parents think you're an embarrassment, that you don't fit the image they want to project? Noah, always the blunt one, sat down next to me and said, "Mom told Dad you wouldn't fit in with the fancy dinners. She said you don't have the right clothes and you'd probably say something weird and make everyone uncomfortable." Hailey looked up at me, confused, her button eyes searching my face. "But you have clothes, Grandpa. You're wearing clothes right now. You look fine." "I do," I said quietly, feeling something crack inside my chest. Noah kicked at the dirt with his sneaker, creating little puffs of dust. He looked guilty, like he knew he'd said something he wasn't supposed to repeat, like he'd betrayed a confidence. "I think you'd be fine, Grandpa. You're not weird. You tell good stories. You know about fish and machines and old movies." "Thanks, buddy." I hugged them both and told them to have fun on the cruise, told them to take pictures for me, told them to remember everything so they could tell me about it when they got back, told them I loved them more than anything in the world. When Brianna picked them up, she didn't get out of the car, just honked the horn twice, sharp and impatient, and waved from the driver's seat. The kids climbed in, still chattering about the ice cream and the swings. Brianna drove away without a word, not even a thank you for watching them, not even a wave. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop, an old Dell that took 3 minutes to boot up and made a grinding noise whenever it processed anything complicated, and logged into my bank account. I scrolled back through 3 years of transactions, a long digital record of money leaving my account. Transfers to Evan, $500 here, $200 there, $800 for the car repair when his transmission started slipping and making a horrible grinding noise. $600 for daycare when Brianna's hours got cut at her job and they couldn't afford the full-time rate. $2,000 when the furnace broke in the middle of January and they had no heat and the kids were sleeping in their winter coats. Every time, Evan had promised to pay me back. "Next month, Dad, I swear, as soon as my commission check comes through." Or, "Dad, I'll get you back when my tax refund hits, definitely by March." Or, "Just give me until summer. I'll have it sorted out. Things will be better then." Next month never came. I opened my text messages and scrolled through our conversation history. It was a pattern, clear as glass now that I was looking for it. Evan asking for help, me saying yes, Evan thanking me briefly, sometimes just with a thumbs-up emoji or a quick thanks, then silence until the next request, the cycle repeating endlessly. I was about to close the app when a new notification appeared at the top of the screen. A group chat, Evan, Brianna, and Brianna's parents, Linda and Robert Hutchinson, who lived in a large house in a gated community and made sure everyone knew it, who drove matching luxury cars and took 2 vacations a year. I opened it. Brianna had sent photos of the cruise tickets, screenshots from the cruise line's website, first-class balcony cabins with ocean views, unlimited drink packages, excursion bookings for snorkeling in crystal-clear water, ziplining through tropical forests, and a private beach day with umbrellas and waiters serving cocktails. The total cost, based on what I could see in the screenshots, was easily $7,000, maybe closer to $8,000. Then a message from Brianna. "So excited. Now we can finally breathe without extra baggage." Linda Hutchinson replied with a string of celebration emojis, champagne glasses, palm trees, suns, smiley faces. Robert wrote, "You two deserve this. Enjoy every minute, make memories." I stared at the screen. Extra baggage. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. Outside, the city hummed with life. Cars passed on the street below, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Somewhere, a dog barked. A siren wailed in the distance. Life continued, indifferent to the small collapse happening inside my chest. I thought about the house again, about the $40,000 I'd given them, about my name on those documents, legally binding me to their debt, about how Evan had promised it would only be temporary, just a year or two until he got on his feet. 3 years wasn't temporary, and now I was baggage. Monday afternoon, I was picking up groceries at the strip mall near my apartment. The store was one of those discount chains where everything came in bulk, and the aisles were narrow and cluttered, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, with a sound that made your teeth ache if you listened too long. I just loaded a bag of rice and a box of spaghetti into my cart when I heard Brianna's voice coming from the next aisle over. She was on speakerphone, talking loud enough for half the store to hear, not caring who overheard. "I'm telling you, Jessica, it's such a relief," she was saying. Her voice had that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound mature and put upon, like she was dealing with such burdens. "We've been trying to get out from under his shadow for years. He's just so clingy and awkward in public. Like last month, we went to dinner with some of Evan's work friends, people he needs to impress, for his career. And Henry told this long story about fixing a conveyor belt in 1987. Nobody cared. It was so uncomfortable. Everyone just sat there nodding politely while he went on and on. I froze, my hand still on a box of spaghetti, my fingers gripping it so hard the cardboard started to dent. "Good for you," the voice on the phone said. I couldn't tell if it was genuinely supportive or just polite, the way people are when they're only half listening. "You shouldn't have to babysit your father-in-law." Brianna laughed, a sharp sound that echoed off the tile floor. "Exactly, like we love him and everything, but there's a limit. He doesn't get that we have our own lives now, our own identity as a family. We're not just extensions of him. Anyway, the cruise is going to be perfect. Just us, just the four of us. No extra stress, no having to explain things or make accommodations or worry about whether he's comfortable. Evan's finally on board with setting boundaries. I've been pushing for this for a while." "How'd you get Evan to agree? I thought he was pretty close with his dad." I just pointed out how much his dad relies on us emotionally, how it's not healthy for any of us, how we need space to be our own family unit, to develop our own traditions without always including Henry. Once Evan saw it that way, once I framed it in terms of our kids' well-being, he understood. He didn't want Noah and Hailey growing up thinking it's normal to be that dependent. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. I could have walked around the corner, could have confronted her right there in the middle of the store, could have said something, made her face me, forced her to own those words, but I didn't. I quietly pushed my cart toward the register, taking the long way around through the produce section to avoid running into her. I didn't want to hear any more, didn't want to know what else she said, didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much her words hurt. That Friday was Evan's birthday, his 34th. He'd invited me to a family-style restaurant near their house. One of those places with big tables and loud music and waiters who wore suspenders and sang when they brought out the cake, clapping and making a spectacle. Brianna's parents were there, sitting at the head of the table like royalty holding court. Linda wore a silk blouse and expensive jewelry that caught the light. Robert had on a golf shirt with a country club logo embroidered on the chest. Also, there were a few of Evan's work friends, people I'd met maybe once or twice at previous gatherings but who didn't really know me, who smiled politely but never asked questions. I brought an envelope with $200 in cash. It was all I could manage without dipping into the money I'd set aside for utilities and next month's rent. I'd withdrawn it from the ATM that morning, counting out 10 $20 bills and tucking them into a card I'd bought at the drugstore, one that said, "Happy birthday, son," with a picture of a fishing boat on the front. Brianna's father arrived with a brand new set of golf clubs in a leather bag, the kind with individual covers for each club and a built-in cooler pocket. The bag probably cost $800, maybe more. Her mother brought an expensive watch in a velvet box, a Tag Heuer, she announced proudly, like she wanted everyone to know exactly how much she'd spent. Evan made a big show of opening each gift, holding them up for photos that Brianna immediately posted to social media with captions about being blessed and grateful, thanking everyone enthusiastically with hugs and handshakes. When he got to my envelope, he barely glanced at it, just tore it open, looked at the cash for a second, and said, "Thanks, Dad," before setting it aside on top of a pile of wrapping paper and ribbons. Brianna's mother leaned over to me and said, in a voice that was just loud enough to carry to the people sitting nearby, "That's sweet, Henry. Every little bit helps, right? Cash is always useful." I nodded and kept my expression neutral, taking a sip of water. Robert chuckled, a deep sound from his belly. "Cash is king. Can't go wrong with cash. Though I suppose a watch would be hard to wrap in an envelope." He laughed at his own joke. The words stung, even though I knew they weren't meant to be cruel. Just thoughtless. Just another reminder that my contribution was small, practical, nothing impressive, nothing worth photographing. Later, after the meal, Evan stood up to make a speech. He was a little buzzed from the drinks, his face flushed and his voice louder than usual, carrying across the restaurant. He talked about how proud he was of his house, his mortgage, his hard work providing for the family. He said he was planning to refinance soon and finally stop carrying other people so he could focus on what really mattered. He talked about being a self-made man, about building something from nothing. Stop carrying other people. Self-made. I stayed quiet, smiled when people looked at me, ate my steak, and tried to pretend the words didn't land like punches. Brianna beamed at him from across the table, her eyes shining with pride. Her parents applauded. His coworkers raised their glasses in a toast. Nobody mentioned that the house wouldn't exist without me, that his mortgage was only possible because my name was on it, that I'd been the one carrying them, not the other way around. When I got home that night, I pulled out the accordion folder again and spread the documents across my kitchen table, creating an organized layout like evidence in a courtroom. The mortgage, the title, the original loan agreement, the bank statements showing my automatic transfers covering shortfalls when they couldn't make the full payment. 3 years of financial history laid out in black and white. I wasn't a lawyer, but I could read plain English, and the contract was clear. I was listed as a co-borrower. That meant the bank had used my income and my credit to approve the loan. It also meant I had rights and responsibilities and options. There was a clause on page 7, buried in the fine print beneath paragraphs about interest rates and payment schedules. It explained what would happen if a co-borrower requested to be removed from the loan. The bank would reassess the remaining borrower's qualifications, income, credit score, payment history, debt-to-income ratio. If they didn't meet the current standards, the bank could demand full repayment within a specified time frame, typically 30 to 90 days depending on the circumstances. If that wasn't possible, the bank would move toward foreclosure or force a sale of the property to recover their investment. I read the clause 3 times, tracing each word with my finger, then took a pen and circled it carefully, drawing a thick blue line around the entire paragraph. I opened my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Laura Kent's number. She was an old union friend, a labor and contract lawyer who'd helped me navigate a workplace injury dispute back in 2009 when everything felt hopeless. I'd torn my rotator cuff on the job, reaching up to adjust a heavy piece of equipment that should have required 2 people, but that I'd tried to handle alone because we were short-staffed. The company had tried to claim it was a pre-existing condition, something that happened at home or was just age-related wear and tear. Laura had helped me fight it, documenting everything, gathering medical records, securing workers' comp and medical coverage that paid for the surgery and physical therapy. We'd stayed in touch over the years, mostly through occasional coffee meetups where we caught up on life and holiday cards where she updated me on her cases. I left her a voicemail, my voice steady. "Laura, it's Henry Cole. I need some advice about a contract. Personal matter, not work-related. Call me when you get a chance. No rush, but sooner is better than later." Then I set a new reminder on my phone. Talk to bank manager. No more being used. I stared at the circled clause for a long time, reading it over and over until I'd memorized every word. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. But again, sleep didn't come easy. I lay there thinking about the look on Evan's face when he'd set my envelope aside, about Brianna laughing in the grocery store, about being called extra baggage, about 3 years of automatic transfers and late-night emergency calls, and always, always being there when they needed me. About how I'd spent 3 years believing I was helping, when really I'd just been convenient. Monday morning at 9, I walked into the First Union Bank branch on Main Street. It was a clean, modern building with glass walls that made everything visible from the street, and too much air conditioning that hit you like a wave the moment you stepped inside, the kind of place that felt more like a corporate office than a neighborhood bank. I approached the counter and asked to speak with someone about my mortgage. The teller, a young woman with a name tag that said Ashley, smiled politely. She had braces and looked like she was maybe 22. "Do you have an account with us?" "I'm a co-borrower on a mortgage," I said. "Loan number 47218856. I'd like to review the details." She nodded and typed something into her computer, her fingers moving fast across the keyboard, then gestured toward a row of chairs near the window. "Someone will be with you shortly." I sat down and waited. The bank was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of a transaction going through. A woman in a business suit walked past, talking on her phone about interest rates and refinancing options. A young couple stood at another counter, looking stressed as they discussed some kind of loan application, the man running his hands through his hair while the woman kept checking her phone. 10 minutes later, a woman in her 40s approached me. She had short, dark hair styled professionally, sharp eyes that didn't miss anything, and a no-nonsense expression that reminded me of the union reps I used to work with, the ones who could read through corporate nonsense and get to the truth. "Mr. Cole, I'm Maya Sanders, branch manager. How can I help you today?" I followed her into a glass-walled office near the back of the lobby. She closed the door, which muffled the sound from outside, but didn't provide much privacy since anyone walking past could see us through the transparent walls. She sat down behind her desk and pulled up a file on her computer, scanning through screens of information. "Let me see here. You're listed on a property at 428 Maple Ridge Drive. Co-borrower with Evan Cole. Loan originated in August 3 years ago. Original amount was $140,000. Current balance is $134,000. 30-year fixed rate at 4.2%. "That's right. What questions do you have?" I leaned forward slightly, my hands folded on her desk. "I want to understand what it means that I'm a co-borrower, what my responsibilities are, what my rights are, what happens if circumstances change." Maya studied me for a moment, her expression careful, like she was trying to figure out where this conversation was going. Then she turned her screen slightly so I could see it, pointing to different sections. "You're fully responsible for the loan, just like Mr. Evan Cole. If he misses payments, the bank can come after you. Your credit is on the line. If he defaults completely, we can pursue you for the full amount. You're not just a reference or a cosigner in the traditional sense. You're a co-borrower, which means you have equal responsibility." "And if I want to remove myself from the loan?" She raised an eyebrow, her interest clearly piqued. "That would require refinancing. The remaining borrower would need to qualify on their own. We'd reassess their income, credit score, debt-to-income ratio, employment history, and payment history on this loan specifically. And if they don't qualify, then the bank would likely require the loan to be paid in full within a specified time frame, usually 60 to 90 days. If that's not possible..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We'd move toward foreclosure or recommend a sale of the property to recover our investment." I nodded slowly, absorbing the information, feeling it settle into place like pieces of a puzzle. "Can you tell me about the payment history on this loan?" Maya clicked through a few screens, her expression shifting slightly, becoming more guarded. "There have been some late payments. Nothing catastrophic that would trigger immediate action, but enough to raise concerns from an underwriting perspective. It looks like..." She scrolled down, reading through the data. "Yes. There have been several automatic transfers from an external account, yours, I'm guessing, to cover shortfalls. Without those transfers, there would have been at least 6 missed payments over the past 18 months. Possibly more." "That's correct. Those are my transfers." She looked at me carefully, her eyes searching my face. "Mr. Cole, may I ask what's prompting these questions? Is there a problem we should know about?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I'm trying to protect myself. I need to understand my options." "I understand." She folded her hands on the desk, mirroring my posture. "If you'd like to explore your options more formally, I can schedule a meeting to go over everything in detail. We're actually planning a routine review of this mortgage in a few weeks anyway. Standard procedure when there's been payment inconsistency. It would be helpful if you could attend as the co-borrower. We'd go over the current status, payment history, and discuss any changes that might be necessary." "I'll be there," I said. She handed me a business card with her direct number printed on it in raised letters. "Call me if you have any other questions before then. And Mr. Cole?" She paused, her voice dropping slightly. "Whatever you decide to do, make sure you understand the consequences. This kind of decision affects everyone on the loan. It's not something to do impulsively." "I know," I said. "I've been thinking about this for a while." I thanked her and left. That afternoon, I met Laura at her law office downtown. It was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building with a creaky elevator, accessible also by a narrow staircase that smelled like wood polish and old paper and decades of legal documents. Her office was a small space, cluttered with file boxes stacked in corners and diplomas on the wall from law schools I'd never heard of, places in Pennsylvania and Ohio. She poured me a cup of coffee from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there since morning, the coffee thick and bitter, and sat down across from me at a worn wooden table scarred with coffee rings and pen marks. "So," she said, settling into her chair and opening a legal pad. "Tell me what's going on, Henry. Your message sounded serious." I told her everything, the cruise text and the exact words Evan had used, the years of financial support and the automatic transfers that kept them afloat, the pattern of disrespect that had grown from subtle slights to open cruelty, the overheard phone conversation in the grocery store where Brianna called me clingy and awkward, the birthday dinner where my cash gift was dismissed as insignificant, the mortgage, and my role as co-borrower. Laura listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on a legal pad in shorthand I couldn't read. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed, a deep sound. "Henry, you've been a safety net for your son, and he's been taking advantage of that. Probably not maliciously at first, but over time it's become a pattern." "I know. Do you want to cut him off completely? Because that's essentially what we're talking about here. Once you pull your support from this mortgage, there's no going back. The bank will move forward with their process. I don't know if I want to cut him off forever, but I want to protect myself, and I want to make sure my grandkids are taken care of, no matter what happens between me and Evan." She nodded slowly, making more notes. "Okay, let's talk about your options, and then you can decide what feels right." She explained that I could request to be removed from the mortgage, forcing the bank to reassess Evan's qualifications. Given what I'd told her about his income instability, his damaged credit score, and the late payments, it was unlikely he'd qualify on his own under current lending standards. She also talked about my savings and assets, specifically an old family trust I'd set up years ago and never touched. It was something I'd put together when my wife was still alive, intended to pass along whatever we had to future generations. After she passed 12 years ago, I'd let it sit dormant, never updating it, never thinking about it. "You can restructure it," Laura said, flipping through some documents she'd pulled from a file drawer. "Make it so that anything you leave behind goes directly to Noah and Hailey, bypassing Evan and Brianna entirely. You'd name a neutral trustee, maybe me, if you trust me, or we can find someone else, to manage it until the kids are old enough. Could be for college or when they turn 25, whatever you decide. You can set conditions, you can make it ironclad." "Is that legal? Can I really do that?" "Completely legal. It's your money, your assets. You have every right to decide how it's distributed after you're gone. People do this all the time when they're concerned about their children's financial responsibility or when there are addiction issues or bad marriages. This is actually a fairly common estate planning tool. I asked her to draw up the paperwork. Over the next 2 weeks, I went over everything with Laura in multiple meetings. We reviewed the trust documents line by line, discussing every clause and condition. We discussed the mortgage options and what would happen when I formally requested to be removed, walking through different scenarios. She made it clear that what I was planning wouldn't break any laws. It was all within the system, all using existing legal mechanisms. I was just using the tools available to me. The same tools the bank used, the same contracts Evan had signed, the same estate planning options available to anyone. "It's going to hurt him," Laura warned during our third meeting, leaning forward with her hands clasped. "And it's going to hurt fast. Once the bank reassesses and realizes he doesn't qualify, they'll move quickly. He'll have maybe 60 to 90 days to either pay off the full balance, which he can't do, or sell the house. And in this market, with that kind of pressure, he won't get top dollar. He'll lose money on the deal." "That's what I want," I said quietly. "Not because I want to hurt him, but because I need him to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't use people and discard them." "Are you sure?" I thought about the cruise text, seeing the words in my mind, about being called extra baggage, about 3 years of carrying them while being treated like an embarrassment, like someone to be managed and kept at a distance. "Yes." One afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop near the courthouse, one of those independent places with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls, reviewing the paperwork Laura had prepared. The trust restructure was typed up cleanly on official letterhead, professional, with signatures required in all the right places, and witness lines and notary stamps. The formal request to remove myself from the mortgage was shorter, more direct, citing the clause on page 7 of the original agreement. I listened to old voicemails from Evan on my phone, playing them back one by one. "Hey, Dad, can you help with the electric bill this month? We're a little short, just $100. "Dad, Brianna's car needs new tires. Can you spot me $400? I'll pay you back next week when my commission check hits." "Hey, we're behind on the mortgage payment. Can you cover it this once? I promise this is the last time. Things will be better next month." It was never the last time. Things were never better. I compared those messages to the cruise text, switching back and forth between screens, to the group chat where I was called baggage, to Brianna laughing about me in the grocery store, calling me clingy. It was like looking at two different people. The Evan who needed me, who called me Dad with warmth in his voice, and the Evan who was ashamed of me, who saw me as an obstacle to overcome. A few days later, Maya called me. Mr. Cole, I wanted to confirm our meeting. It's scheduled for 2 weeks from now, Monday the 22nd. That's the Monday after your son gets back from his cruise. Does that still work for you? That works perfectly, I said. Great. We'll go over the mortgage status, payment history, and any changes you'd like to make to your involvement with the loan. I should mention that we'll have a junior loan officer present as well, standard procedure for these reviews. And if you'd like to bring any documentation or have any specific questions prepared, that would be helpful. I'll be prepared. I hung up and opened my calendar. I changed the meeting title from Mortgage Review to Last Time They Use Me. Then I sat back and waited. The days passed slowly. I went about my routine, grocery shopping, watching television, taking walks around the neighborhood where I'd see young families and wonder if they appreciated what they had. But underneath it all, I felt a strange sense of calm, like I'd been carrying a weight for years and was finally about to set it down. I didn't reach out to Evan, didn't ask how the cruise planning was going, didn't wish them a safe trip, didn't send any messages at all. I just waited, counting down the days. The next week, I met Laura again at her office. She slid a small stack of papers across the table, the pages crisp and official looking. This is the trust restructure. Everything you have left, your savings, the remainder of your pension, any assets including that old life insurance policy you mentioned, will go directly to Noah and Hailey when you pass. You can name a neutral trustee, someone who'll manage it until the kids are old enough. I've drafted it so that I would serve as trustee unless you want someone else. Evan and Brianna won't have any access to it, can't touch it, can't borrow against it, can't make any decisions about it, nothing. I signed the papers without hesitation, my hand steady, my signature firm. And this, she said, pushing another document forward, is the formal request to remove yourself from the mortgage. You'll submit it at the bank meeting. Once you do, the bank will reassess Evan's qualifications. Based on what you've told me about his payment history, his fluctuating income, and his current credit score, he probably won't meet their standards. They'll either demand full repayment within 60 to 90 days or move towards selling the property to recover their investment. There's really no middle ground here. That's what I want, I said quietly. Laura looked at me for a long moment, her expression serious. Are you sure? This is going to hurt him, Henry. This is going to hurt him badly. He's going to lose the house. His credit will be destroyed for years. It'll take him maybe 7 to 10 years to fully recover. And his wife? Well, based on what you've told me about Brianna, this is going to create a massive amount of stress in their marriage. There might be consequences you haven't thought about. He hurt me first, for 3 years. She nodded slowly. Okay, just make sure you're ready for the fallout. He's going to call you, multiple times. He's going to beg. He's going to cry. He might even threaten legal action, though he doesn't have a leg to stand on legally. And you need to be prepared to hold your ground, because the moment you waver, the moment you show any weakness, he'll use that to manipulate you back into the same pattern. I will. I folded the papers carefully and put them in my jacket pocket. That Saturday, I took Noah and Hailey to the park one last time before their cruise. The weather was perfect, warm but not hot, with a light breeze that carried the smell of cut grass. I bought them hot dogs from a vendor near the playground, the kind with mustard and relish that they always made a mess with, yellow and green condiments ending up everywhere except their mouths. I watched them play on the swings, their laughter cutting through the warm afternoon air like something pure and uncomplicated. The day felt almost sacred, like it was the last normal moment before everything changed. Noah ran up to me, breathing hard, his face flushed with excitement and exertion. Grandpa, why aren't you coming with us on the cruise? Mom said it's because you're too old and you wouldn't enjoy it. I winced. Did she say that? He nodded, then looked guilty, like he'd betrayed a secret. She didn't mean it in a bad way. She just said old people don't like cruises because of all the walking and the stairs and the noise. She said you'd be more comfortable staying home. Hailey climbed onto my lap, her little hands sticky with mustard and relish, leaving yellow smudges on my shirt. I wish you were coming. You're fun. You always let us have ice cream and you tell the best stories about when you were young. You're not like other grandpas who just sit around. I hugged her, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me, feeling like I might crack under the pressure of knowing what was coming. I'll see you when you get back, sweetheart. Will you take us fishing again? Noah asked, his eyes hopeful. You said you'd show me how to tie a proper knot, the kind that doesn't slip. Of course. As soon as you get back, we'll go fishing. But I knew things would be different by then. I knew the next time I saw these kids, their world would be turned upside down. They'd probably be confused. Angry, maybe, though they wouldn't fully understand why. They might not understand why they had to move, why their parents were fighting more than usual, why Grandpa wasn't helping anymore, why everything was falling apart. Brianna picked them up an hour later. She didn't get out of the car, didn't even roll down the window all the way. Just waved impatiently from the driver's seat, her sunglasses covering half her face. The kids climbed in, still chattering about the hot dogs and the swings and how high they'd gone. Brianna drove away without a word, not even a thank you for watching them, not even a wave in my direction. That night, I went over everything one more time. The trust documents, which I read word by word to make sure I understood every clause. The mortgage request forms, which I checked for any errors or missing information. The meeting schedule, which I'd marked on 3 different calendars to make sure I didn't forget. I mailed copies of the trust papers to Laura and delivered the mortgage request forms to Maya's office in a sealed envelope marked confidential for meeting on 4/22. I felt calm, clear-headed, like I'd finally found solid ground after years of standing on shifting sand, after years of wondering when the ground would give way. The next morning, I drove out to the cruise terminal parking lot. I didn't plan to go inside, didn't want to create a scene. I just wanted to see them leave, wanted to mark the moment in my mind, wanted to remember this as the day everything changed. I parked at the far end of the lot, near a row of palm trees that provided some shade from the morning sun. I watched as Evan and Brianna pulled up in their SUV, a vehicle I'd helped them buy 2 years ago when their old car broke down and they couldn't afford a down payment. They had 4 huge suitcases and matching carry-ons, all expensive-looking luggage with designer labels and wheels that rolled smoothly across the pavement. Brianna was wearing oversized sunglasses and a sundress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, the kind of outfit people wear when they want to look effortlessly wealthy. Evan was grinning, already taking selfies with the massive cruise ship in the background, his phone held high to get the best angle, probably planning to post them to social media immediately. The kids climbed out of the car, looking excited and a little overwhelmed by the crowds and the noise and the sheer size of everything. Noah was carrying a backpack shaped like a shark, his most prized possession. Hailey had a little pink rolling suitcase covered in princess stickers that she'd picked out herself. Noah spotted me across the parking lot and waved enthusiastically, jumping up and down to make sure I saw him. I waved back, feeling my throat tighten, feeling tears threaten at the corners of my eyes. Evan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then typed something quickly, his thumbs moving fast across the screen. A moment later, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. His message. "We'll talk when we get back. Need to discuss some things." I stared at the words for a long moment, wondering what he thought we needed to discuss, whether he suspected anything. Then I typed a single word. "Yes." I watched them walk toward the terminal, disappearing into the crowd of excited families and busy porters pushing carts loaded with luggage. The ship's horn blew, a deep, resonant sound that echoed across the parking lot and seemed to vibrate in my chest. I sat there until the ship pulled away from the dock, until I couldn't see them anymore, until the massive vessel was just a shape on the horizon. Then I drove home, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind clear. The Monday after they returned, I drove to the First Union Bank at exactly 1:45 p.m. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. I arrived early on purpose, wanting to be settled and calm before everyone else showed up, wanting to have the psychological advantage of already being in the room. Maya greeted me in the lobby. "Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. Right on time. We're set up in the conference room." She led me down a hallway to a glass-walled conference room near the back of the building. It had a long table made of dark wood, thick folders stacked at each seat, and a speakerphone in the center that looked complicated with multiple buttons and lights. People walking past in the hallway could see inside through the glass walls. There was nowhere to hide, no privacy. Everything that happened would be visible. I took a seat facing the door, positioning myself strategically. At 1:55, Evan and Brianna arrived. They looked tan from the cruise, rested, but annoyed and confused, like they couldn't understand why they'd been called in for what they assumed was routine paperwork. Evan was wearing business casual clothes, pressed slacks, and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Brianna had on skinny jeans and a blazer, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her makeup perfect. They stopped short when they saw me sitting there. "Dad?" Evan's voice was uncertain, confused. "What are you doing here? I thought this was about our mortgage." "I was invited," I said calmly, keeping my voice level. "I'm a co-borrower. This concerns me too. Actually, it concerns me more than you might think." Brianna's eyes narrowed, her expression shifting to something guarded. But she didn't say anything. They took seats across from me, the table between us like a barrier. The tension in the room was immediate and thick, almost suffocating. Maya entered with a junior loan officer, a young man in his 20s named Derek, carrying a laptop and looking nervous. They sat down at the head of the table, creating a triangle formation. "Thank you all for coming," Maya said, opening one of the folders with deliberate slowness. "We're here today for a review of the mortgage on 428 Maple Ridge Drive. This is standard procedure when there have been inconsistencies in payment history." She looked directly at Evan. "Mr. Cole, you've been late on 6 payments over the past 18 months. Several of those would have resulted in default and initiated foreclosure proceedings if not for automatic transfers from an external account." Evan shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Brianna. "We've always made the payments eventually. It's never been a real problem. Sometimes commissions come in late or expenses hit at the wrong time, but we always catch up." "With assistance, yes." Maya turned to me. "Mr. Henry Cole, as the co-borrower, has been covering those shortfalls, which brings us to the reason for this meeting." She slid a document across the table, the paper making a soft sound against the wood. "Mr. Henry Cole has formally requested to remove himself from this loan." The room went completely silent. Evan stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language, like the words didn't make sense. "What?" "Your father has requested to be removed as co-borrower and guarantor. This means the bank needs to reassess your qualifications for the loan based solely on your income, credit, and payment history." Brianna leaned forward aggressively, her hands flat on the table. "But he can't just do that. He signed a contract. This is our house. He can't just pull the rug out from under us." "Actually," Maya said calmly, her voice professional and unemotional, "he can. The contract allows for either party to request modifications under certain circumstances. It's within his legal rights. I've consulted with our legal department to confirm." Evan looked at me, his face pale, his eyes wide. "Dad, what is this? What's going on?" I didn't answer. "Not yet." Maya continued, reading from the document. "We've reviewed your current financial situation, Mr. Evan Cole. Your income is $52,000 annually, primarily commission-based with significant monthly fluctuation, anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 per month based on sales performance. Your credit score has dropped to 610 due to the late payments on this mortgage and some other revolving credit issues. Your debt-to-income ratio currently sits at 47%, which exceeds our current lending standards of 43% maximum." She paused, letting the numbers sink in. "Based on these factors, you do not qualify for this mortgage on your own under current underwriting guidelines." "So, what does that mean?" Brianna's voice was sharp, almost shrill. "What exactly are you saying?" "It means the bank is exercising its contractual right to call the loan due. You have 90 days to either pay the full remaining balance of $134,000 or sell the property and pay us back from the proceeds." The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated, the shockwave spreading across the table. Evan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound. "You can't do this. We have kids. We have a life there. That's our home. Everything we own is in that house." Maya remained calm, her expression unchanged. "I understand this is difficult, but these are the terms of the contract you signed. Without Mr. Henry Cole's backing, his credit, his income, his guarantee, the loan is no longer viable from the bank's perspective. We cannot continue to carry a loan that doesn't meet our current standards." Evan turned to me, his eyes wild, desperate. "Dad, why are you doing this? What did we do? I don't understand. We can talk about this. Whatever it is, we can fix it." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the text message. I slid the phone across the table slowly, deliberately. He picked it up and read it. His face went from pale to red, a sudden flush rising across his cheeks. "This cruise is just for our little family. Brianna says you'd only embarrass us. Stop inviting yourself." Brianna grabbed the phone and read it, her mouth opening slightly, then set it down quickly like it was hot. "That was taken out of context. You're being overly sensitive." "Was it?" I said quietly, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Because I also heard you in the grocery store, Brianna, talking to your friend Jessica on speakerphone, talking about how clingy I am, how awkward, how you're finally free of my shadow, how I told boring stories at dinner that embarrassed Evan in front of his coworkers." Brianna's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Evan, then back at me. "I backed your mortgage for 3 years," I said, my voice steady. "I gave you $40,000 for the down payment, money I saved over decades. I sold my car, emptied my savings, covered 6 missed payments, paid for repairs, daycare, medical bills. Every crisis I stepped in. All I wanted was a little respect, maybe an invitation to the cruise I indirectly helped pay for. Evan sank into his chair, shaking. Dad, I'm sorry. We were stressed. We thought it'd be awkward with Brianna's parents, and we just wanted something simple. We didn't mean... Yes, I said sharply. You did. You think I'm an embarrassment. You used me when you needed me, ignored me when you didn't. You treated me like a walking ATM. Maya cleared her throat. We need to finalize this meeting. I nodded, then faced Evan again. Something in me settled. Final. Irreversible. There's something else you should know. Evan looked up, panicked. What? I restructured my trust. Everything I have, savings, pension remainder, life insurance, now goes directly to Noah and Hailey. It's locked with Laura Kent as trustee. You and Brianna can't touch it. Not now, not ever. It's for the kids' future, not yours. Brianna gasped. You can't do that? We're their parents. I can, and I did. Laura made sure it's airtight. I stood, feeling old but solid. I'll always love my grandkids, but you two, you're on your own now. Every bill, every decision, that's yours. And unless you speak to me with respect, I won't be answering your calls, which means I probably won't hear from you for a long time. Evan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. This is vindictive, Brianna snapped. You're punishing us over one text message? It wasn't one message. It was 3 years of being used and dismissed. This isn't punishment, it's consequences. I turned to Maya. Are we done? Yes, she said softly. Paperwork will arrive within 48 hours. The 90-day clock begins today. I walked out without looking back, through the lobby and into the too bright afternoon. My phone rang before I reached my car. Evan. I declined. He called again. Declined. A text appeared. Dad, please, we need to talk. You can't do this. We have kids, please. Then another. I'm sorry about the cruise text. I didn't mean it, please, Dad. I turned the phone off. At home, I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and let the silence fill the room. 2 weeks later, I drove past their house. A moving truck filled the driveway. A sale pending sign stood in the yard. Evan and Brianna argued on the curb, voices sharp, tired. Evan looked 10 years older. Noah and Hailey sat on a suitcase near the garage, confused, scared, Hailey crying while Noah tried to comfort her. My phone lit up. 5 missed calls from Evan, 3 from Brianna, 2 voicemails, texts. Please, Dad, help us. We're losing everything. The kids are asking for you. They don't understand. I'll do anything, just please. I looked at the house, the suitcases, my grandkids. Then I put the phone face down, shifted into drive, and kept going.